everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Megan, and in today's video I'm going to be going over Psalm 88, which is a cry of desperation. This psalm is pretty much, the psalmist is at the point of death and is drowning in depression, and day and night the psalmist cries out to God, asking him to listen to his prayer. In agony, the psalmist calls out to God. He reminds that there is no praise of God among the dead. The deceased don't worship him. That's Psalm 88:10. But God keeps his face hidden and withholds his rescue. Psalm 88:13-14. So that is pretty much what is happening. The psalmist is like almost to the point of death and is drowning in depression, and he's constantly crying out to God, and he probably feels abandoned. He feels like God has left him because God is he's keeping his face hidden and is withholding his rescue. I'm pretty sure we've all been at a time at a place in our life where it feels like God has left us, that he's abandoned us, and that he has kept his face hidden from us and withholding his rescue. Maybe feeling that right now. Yeah, this seems like a very dark psalm. It reminds us that life doesn't always have these happy endings. This life isn't always gonna be happy and joyful. There's going to be suffering and trials, hardships in life, and some of these hardships are just never going to get better, but that doesn't mean we should turn away from God. Even though God had his face hidden and was withholding his rescue, the psalmist still cried out to God. Psalm 88:1-2, it says, "Lord God of my salvation, I cry out before you day and night to make my prayer reach your presence. Listen to my cry." One of the points that I wanted to make is I think this was so cool because I read one psalm a day, and so this is the one that I was reading today. But I want to say, if God has laid you in a grave of despair and flooded you with terrors, hear this. God has laid you beside his beloved Son. Jesus has suffered and died with you. And this one got me. The God who saves didn't save Jesus. That means when you feel abandoned, Jesus always weeps with you. So in Matthew 27:43 says, "He trusts in God, let God rescue him now, if he takes pleasure in him, for he said, I am the Son of God." This was when Jesus was hanging on the cross with the other two criminals, and they're like saying, he saved others, but he cannot save himself. He's pretty much trying to people are trying to have him prove that he's the Son of God by saving himself. So 27:43 says, "He trusts in God, let God rescue him now, if he takes pleasure in him, for he said, I am the Son of God." And then Matthew 27:50, skip a few verses, "But Jesus cried out again with a loud voice and gave up his spirit." God did not save Jesus from dying on the cross because that was his will for him, for us. Jesus had to die on the cross to save us and to rescue us from our sin, and so that we can have a relationship with him. So sometimes God's will doesn't have a happy ending, except it does in a way. Here on earth, it may not have a happy ending because we're all going to die. We're all going to suffer. We're going to feel the pain and the hurt. We're going to go through hardships and trials. And that honestly sounds horrible. Nobody wants to go through that. But remember, Jesus suffered as well. And being followers of Christ, we're going to suffer as well because we're going to suffer with him. God's will for Jesus was to die on the cross and go through all this suffering and these trials and hardships and being beaten, mocked, and just humiliated. He felt every ounce of pain. He went through a bunch of torture in front of everybody. Jesus just went through the most suffering anyone could have ever had, and that was God's will for him, so that he would die on the cross for you and me. When we go through suffering, when we go through hardships, Jesus weeps with us because he knows what it's like. He knows how our suffering does not mean God is ignoring you or is mad at you. Suffering, however great it may be, doesn't mean God abandoned you any more than it means God abandoned himself. Your suffering doesn't mean God is ignoring you or mad at you. Just because you're going through these hardships doesn't mean God is punishing you for something or he's ignoring you, oh, whatever, I don't really care. Does not mean that. God sees our suffering, knows your pain, and has not left you in the dark. He's actually quite literally right next to you in this darkness. Whatever season you're in, he is sitting right next to you. And again, life does not always have happy endings. Suffering and loss are part of human existence, even for people who are devoted to God. I am a Jesus follower, and I have gone through so much suffering in my life, and I still currently am going through suffering with my physical health and sometimes mental health. I am devoted to God. I love Jesus with my entire heart, but I still suffer, because if Jesus suffers, we're going to suffer with him too. But now I want to get into a little bit about like my story, because my whole life I have gone through a bunch of suffering and hardships and trials like my entire life, and just when things got better for my mental health, my physical health plummeted. Please stop. She wants to say hi. My story, not gonna make it long. I had a traumatic childhood. I'm not gonna get into the details. I grew up in, and I don't mention this a lot. I am not gonna go into detail. I'm just gonna like skim over it. I grew up in an emotionally abusive household, and that obviously in itself, for how long you've been in, is traumatizing, especially since it started at like a young age. It's going to like stick with you because you're so used to it. Then I had something happen to me when I was 11, and I'm not going to go into that details because it's just something I don't really want to like put out there. It was more under like the physical like assault, and police had to be involved and everything, and it just, that kind of like developed into just like having a traumatizing childhood, developed into anxiety and depression. I started like a month before I turned 14. I actually dealt with anxiety my entire life, but the depression didn't start until like a month before I turned 14, and it continued for a really long time. I just went through so much bullying at school, which that can also be traumatic. The family issues didn't start, it didn't get bad, like it didn't get bad until I was 16. 16 was when everything just went downhill. I struggled with self-harm, suicidal thoughts, had many attempts, been hospitalized many times, been through outpatient, inpatient. I went through DBT therapy, individual therapy. I've been on medication. Nothing has helped me. I struggled with mental health for basically my whole entire life. So I went through so much suffering my entire life. Then I got out of high school in the year of 2021. My second year of college was so bad. Like mental health, I've never been in that low of a state. I've never been in that low a place in my entire life. It was horrible. I never wish upon anybody. I was going to end it one night on October 7th of 2021, and that is when God came in, like coming in for me. I don't even know why I did it, but I just called out to God, and I did make a video about this, so I will actually put it at the end of this video. And then I cried out to God, and he just gave me this overwhelming peace to the point where I could stop crying and that I could fall asleep and wake up the next day. In that moment, I didn't know it was God. I did not know what happened. I was just like, oh, okay, like I feel like just this peace that I don't know. That was God just saying, like, Megan, your story's not done yet. Still struggled. So 6 months after that, though, I was planning on ending my life again. But that's when I'm just like, you know what? I'm gonna try Jesus. Like, I've seen people's testimonies about Jesus changing their life. I'm gonna actually, this time, fully try Jesus this time. And once I said my yes to Jesus and I started getting into his living, breathing word, I just was happy. Like, I just felt this joy that I couldn't explain. Now, my life since then has not been full of joy all the time, 24/7. I still suffered and still am suffering, but ever since then, I've suffered in a different way. I've suffered with Jesus. I've been able to, like, go back to his word. Like, his word has helped me a lot. I have been, like, praying all the time. And there's been times where I haven't read my Bible for months and I fell back into a depression. There's been times where I just have fallen back into depression and I still had mental health crisis. The last major depressive episode was May of 2023. That was scary. I am doing so much more better. Obviously, we still have an enemy constantly attacking us, and the enemy knows us so well. Like, he's studied us ever since we were born, and he knows how to bring us down. And I'm still learning to fight it with prayer, fight it with God's word, because this is a sword. This is our weapon, guys. He just never left me, and he was there for me. I said my yes to Jesus, and I started going to the current church that I'm in. And guys, 2.5 years later, if you would have told me I would be in this spot, I would not believe you. I am now a leader for student ministry. I go to church every single Sunday. I read this Bible every single day, and lately I've been doing it multiple times a day. God has provided me so much. He's given me his strength, and I'm in him, I'm happy and filled with joy. Last year, just when my mental health started to really get better and I've had a lot more happy days than sad, I developed a chronic illness. I suffered mentally my entire life, and just when things got better, my health started to suffer too. I was mad. I was like, God, I know suffering is part of this world. I know we're in a fallen world, and suffering, diseases, and illnesses are going to happen, but I am just getting better, and now I have to struggle with my physical health. When it comes to struggling with your physical health, your mental health can also struggle. So it's just like, Lord, what is going on? I don't get it. I don't like this. I don't want it. I don't understand. I already suffered my entire life. Why do I need to continue to suffer more? But God's been reminding me that we are in a fallen world, and these things are going to happen. Being followers of Jesus, we are going to suffer too. That we have to remember. That's it may suck down here, and down here on this earth, our earthly life, that will be the end of our story. It's not a happy ending, but we're going to die. Some people die of health issues. Some people die of cancer, diseases, illnesses, and it's sad. Don't get me wrong. It is so sad. That's not the end of our story. If we have a relationship with Jesus, when we die, we are going to be resurrected up with Jesus. We suffered with Jesus in our earthly life, but we get to resurrect up with him. And I find that so beautiful. With that being said, I hope this spoke to you. I hope my story brought a little bit of hope. And just remember, our hope is in Jesus. And that even though if you're struggling with your health, continue to go to Jesus. If you're struggling with your mental health, continue going to Jesus. Always go to Jesus and never stop. Keep building your relationship with God, because that is your source of strength. That is your source of joy. Don't let your physical health or mental health strip that away from you. Don't let the enemy into your head. Keep crying out to God day and night, just like the psalmist did in this psalm. Day and night, keep going. Even though God is withholding your rescue, keep going to God and never stop, because he is your strength. I pray this spoke to you, and I pray this found the people that it needed to find. Don't forget to comment and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.